What is up, guys? I wanted to talk about why I still collect TV shows and movies physically in 2026. And I'm talking DVDs, Blu-rays, and 4Ks. So let's get right into it. As far as my history with collecting or getting into physical media, it does stem all the way back from video games when my dad had an extensive video game collection, all physically, obviously, for all of those old consoles like NES, SNES, Sega Genesis, and PlayStation 1. When it comes to movies, for me, it really started, my love of movies was just, well, going to the movies, but also renting at the local mom and pop video store. And I'm not talking Blockbuster. I know a lot of people get nostalgic for Blockbuster, but keep in mind, Blockbuster was a little bit more expensive than some of these mom and pop stores, and they would always carry the titles that were a little bit more mainstream, where if you went to mom and pop video stores, they would carry stuff that you might not be able to find at Blockbuster. My family never really frequented Blockbuster at all because it was expensive. I didn't know what that really meant at the time. Like, I knew it was, pricier as a kid, but you have no concept of like, well, why does X, Y, and Z cost more than, these movies over here? Like, you don't really have a concept. You didn't grasp any of that stuff. You were still innocent in that way. Now, for me, going around the horror section in the VHS area was my biggest memory that I have going to the video store and finding all the horror movies that my dad would talk about or that I would just find with the creepy covers. The cover art would draw you in. Having something physically to look at, looking at the back, looking at the pictures of what this movie is, and kind of making up in your brain, what is this? Like, how I've never even seen anything this crazy. So renting stuff from Hometown Video, which was our local mom and pop chain over here in South Jersey, was something that I have so many great memories of, and it really did spawn my love for horror films and just movie collecting in general. Now, at the time, I didn't buy these movies I was renting, but I still understood the physical aspect of, the tape, having to rewind it. DVDs were still around at this time. They were getting, more and more common, but I never forgot that. And then my collecting of games kind of started from this time. So all video games I would always collect. Sometimes we would trade stuff in for other games to make it cheaper. And then it was right around 2008, 2009 is when I started to collect DVDs. And I started to go and get, a couple DVDs here and there of horror movies that I liked or things I always wanted to own. And that kind of stemmed from, going on Walmart or Amazon, things like that. Best Buy had a huge movie section back then, and that would be the biggest areas where I would look for films and movies. And 2010 was when I really started to get into Blu-rays, because at the time I didn't have a Blu-ray player. I had a DVD player on my laptop, which was better than my CRT TV, because I didn't get HD until about middle of 2010 is when I got a 32-inch HD TV with an HDMI and everything. And that was the first time that I actually saw what HD looked like. That was, 1080p. So the PS3 was the only Blu-ray player that we had at the time, and that's what I used for years for my movies. Then Christmas of 2010, I finally got my own Blu-ray player, a Sony Blu-ray player that I still have, and it still works to this day. And then that eventually spawned my Blu-ray collecting. So I do have a lot of DVDs, but I have a lot more Blu-rays, and 4Ks are something that I also collect now. So why physical media? Why do I still go back to having something that is, tangible? Well, it really does come back to the physical aspect for me, is actually holding something, looking at it, and being able to physically put the disc in the machine or the 4K player. I know this seems a little silly to some people now, but there's just something about it that's tangible. And obviously back in the day when you would go to these video stores, what was cool about video stores or going to a store is you would actually be able to see people and talk to people about movies, or you were able to kind of have that social interaction. And physically, the artwork would draw you in. And nowadays with streaming and everything is just kind of digitized on these screens, everything is just kind of there's just so much. It's like oversaturation basically. So you do have everything at your fingertips, or so you think. And then next thing you know, when you're watching a long movie series or a long TV show, while you're watching it, and this has happened to me a handful of times, it disappears and it goes on another streaming service. And it's just way too damn expensive to keep up with all of these streaming services. So that's why I obviously hold on to things that I spend the money on, and I just have it. The only way that these will ever disappear is if, God forbid, something happens or someone breaks into the house and steals it. You know, this is something where it is literally always going to be here. And with streaming, you can't really guarantee that at all. It could always be gone. Things can also be censored and cut from their original ways of releasing it. Another reason why I like physical media is because 9 times out of 10, the version that you have on the Blu-ray and the 4K, unless it's edited like a George Lucas situation for Star Wars or something else where it's so far removed from its original version, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get the original version unrated, unedited as it was intended when it hit the theaters or when it hit physical media. You're not going to have censorship issues. You're not going to have episodes cut out because they're afraid it's going to offend people. You know, stuff like that I'm completely against in terms of streaming. So having something physical, having something that's always there is the key. Now, of course, there's little things that can happen with older DVDs, and that's disc rot. And that is something that does happen, and some DVDs do not work anymore if you got them from a certain brand or, you know, the certain company that put out that DVD. It starts to rot, and it does happen where it just won't read anymore. Now, the biggest thing is that with Blu-rays, I haven't had this issue yet. Now, some people could argue, well, it can happen down the road. Sure, you can also back up your DVDs and Blu-rays, and there's ways to do that. So I can recommend that as well, even though it does take a lot of time to rip everything, and it takes a lot of space and hard drives, and you can build your own home theater, like your own streaming, technically, but it's not streaming because it's really from the downloaded copies of your movies. So there's ways to back up your stuff as well. One thing that I also noticed is that, like, recently I was watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and this DVD set is basically the way it was intended to be watched. And I'm talking 4:3 and everything, because what happened when they put it on streaming? They added a weird filter effect. All the lighting is messed up. The color correction and the cinematography got completely botched because they did just a random auto effect on every single scene, and everything looks too soft and washed out. This is a perfect example of why sometimes owning DVD sets are sometimes even better than Blu-ray sets or streaming sets. Now, Buffy specifically never hit Blu-ray, but at this point, why would you even want it if they're going to ruin it like that? It really depends on the director or the cinematographer's vision. With something like Buffy, they wanted it to be a certain way. And something they also did with Buffy with the streaming is they made it widescreen, because it was shot in widescreen, but then they cut it obviously in 4:3 for a particular reason. So when they went back and they made it widescreen, you would see certain crew and cast members on the side that were supposed to be cut out, but they're there now, you know? So sometimes going back and messing with things for streaming services, depending on the team that does it, can be a disaster. There's other examples where it's handled correctly, but that's just a small example as to why you would want to get the DVD set. Even something like the Friends TV show, which of course has a Blu-ray set and a 4K set, but these are the edited versions of the 4K or the Blu-rays. They're not all the uncut stuff that you would see on the DVD set. That's another reason why you would want to own DVDs. So I still hold on to my DVDs, even though I have a lot more in storage that I have out on the shelves because I don't add to it as often anymore. But I still cherish the ones that I have, especially when it's shows or it's movies that I always go back to. Another reason why I like physical movies is because with Blu-rays and 4K specifically, if you do invest in a decent home theater system, it doesn't even have to be anything crazy. Just, you know, I have a Sony 4K TV, I have a Sony 4K player with the PS5 Pro, and I have a receiver with front and rear speakers and stuff like that, and that's awesome. But the audio quality is always better on these physical movies, and just the picture quality. I mean, the streaming bit rate, there's just no comparison. Even with Netflix, while 4K looks great when you stream it, there's nothing that compares to a 4K disc, and it's uncompressed. It's how it's supposed to look. And I think, especially with color correcting and certain things, like Nolan has been pretty big on this too. He prefers his movies to be viewed on physical media when it gets a home release, because it's just the way it translates well to 4K players, and everything is tweaked a certain way to be fit on the disc. The disc has a certain amount of space, and that gives you what you're looking at. Where streaming, it's like you're not even getting the full quality. Now, some people might not care. Some people don't care. Some people might not even notice. But to someone like us, and I say us as in this whole community of collecting because they're out there, we're here to stay. There's good things you always hear about physical media. There's bad things you always hear about physical media, as far as companies cutting employees that work on certain, divisions of home media, or, all the stuff going to Sony and stuff like that, which of course they make the players. But a lot of times you hear these bad things in the press about physical media, but then you also hear about Gen Z getting into physical media, and, people that weren't around seeing the video stores and seeing the different format changes, and they're getting into it. So it also has a positive and negative as well, depending on which way you're looking at it. But for me, it's always positive because I always have what I want on the shelf. And while I don't have as much Blu-rays or DVDs as some other people online, where I have walls and walls of this stuff and I separate stuff into genres and everything like that, because I don't even have that many Blu-rays or 4Ks to do such a thing, I am just happy that I at least have something that is on the shelf where I want it, and I get the movies that I'm interested in, that I know I'm going to love and go back to. There is a lot of people out there that buy anything that comes out physically, and if I did that, I think I would burn myself out on how much space it takes up and everything, and it does take up a lot of space. And that is, the downside, I guess, to it, is that you're always looking for more space to display these things, and you're making room. So when you buy a couple Blu-rays, you have to shift all your stuff down. So I know that that is a big reason why a lot of people are more minimalistic, but I just can't see a time where I won't walk over to the shelf, see what I'm in the mood for, pull out a movie, and just put it on the console or the 4K player and watch it on the TV. There's just something about putting a disc in and just setting it up with the menu and stuff like that. Yes, I know trailers in the beginning of Blu-rays or 4Ks are annoying. They don't do that as much with a lot of stuff nowadays. Sometimes they do with some releases, but there's certain things where it's I'll deal with that. Or even a TV show, I have to go and get up, take the second disc, put it in, watch those episodes, take out the other disc, put the third one in. But I don't mind that because it's part of it. And if anything, it's just part of a time that is a little bit, I guess, lost on some people, because, when you're binging, people don't think to get up and just put the disc in. They're not thinking about that. They're just thinking the easiest way that they can go and find the show, pay for the subscription service, and get it. I think for me in 2026, the services are just getting really expensive. Netflix just raised their price again. We do pay for Netflix because people use it in the family, but it's just really damn expensive compared to when it started at $9.99 years ago, or even when they were sending, physical DVDs to the mailbox. It just didn't really make sense to keep paying for HBO Max, Hulu, Disney, all this stuff, when at the end of the day, are you really getting your money's worth out of it when you could just buy the show that you want once and then you have it? And you can wait for sales too. I know physical media is very expensive, and it can be depending on what niche you're in, what format you're getting. 4Ks can vary between 30 to 40 to 50 bucks sometimes, depending on if it's a big collection or there's multiple movies. But waiting for sales is essential, because Black Friday is a big time that I buy certain things that I eye up throughout the year. I don't buy movies all the time because of the expense, but when I do, I have to do it smart, and you can shop smart with physical media. Obviously, a lot of these have come throughout the years, whether it was eBay, Amazon, or I just waited. Sometimes, if it's a limited set and I know it's going to sell out or run out of print, or it's a steelbook that I want, because I do like steelbooks, I'll grab it right away. But not all the time do you need to jump on these, because they're always going to be there, and the price does drop. So I know that's another thing too, where some people might be like, well, it costs almost, $30 for, I don't know, Netflix is $25, $26, or $27 or something like that for 4K right now. You can pay for that to watch one 4K movie, or if you spend a little bit more money, you can probably get that 4K movie and just have it forever if it's something you really love. But I'm just giving some examples, but that really does show you that there's just different ways that people consume media, and how important it is to you really depends on what you want to do about it. Getting into it, it might seem very overwhelming. Sometimes collecting can be overwhelming because, again, space, money, time. You got to put a lot of these efforts into, collecting and keeping everything rotating in and out. But at the end of the day, physical media for me is always going to be here to stay. One thing that I also wanted to mention is DVDs and Blu-rays offer special features. Now, I know there's some services that show some special features now, but barely. And I'm talking commentaries, making of featurettes, documentaries on how the film was made. For us filmmakers, this is basically like our film school. And just seeing how they made certain shots work, or hearing interviews from our favorite filmmakers and actors, it just adds another charm to owning a physical disc. And that's why some of us collectors throw a fit when some of these physical discs that we spend money on don't have features. It depends on the studio, it depends on the film, but that's just another perk of having physical media in the collection. And I really love watching movies, consuming movies in this way. And again, do I use streaming services? Yeah, I definitely do. It's not like I'm completely against it, but if it's a movie that I own and it's on a streaming service, I do not watch it on the streaming service, even if it's convenient. As if I can go to all the way downstairs and pick out a movie and bring it all the way upstairs, I'll do that over the convenience of just clicking play, because I just want it to be presented in the best quality, or at least the way I want to watch it. Well, hopefully I explained a little bit to you why I still collect physical media, and hopefully you understand where I'm getting at with some of these releases and where I come from in that era when physical stuff was just the only way to consume. So that's it, guys. So thank you for watching. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I definitely want to do more physical media related updates and just talking about movies anyway on this channel, because this is my film and movie channel after all. So hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content right here on Inocula Productions. Take care.